I think the way we think about sustainability is through the lens of high performance building design or school design, as we like to think about that. So, you know, many years ago, the Green Ribbon Schools program came up with sort of a three-legged stool in defining what sustainable design was relative to schools. And I've always liked that sort of simple structure of resource conservation, creating a healthy, high-performance place to learn, and then ultimately educating the next generation around sustainable design to create the next generation of stewards. So we taken that to heart, I think, in a lot of ways. And so while, of course, we're very interested in ideas about resource conservation and what you find in schools right now are, this topic of net zero schools, net zero energy is very current in many ways, and a lot of schools are pursuing it, and some of the projects that we're doing are pursuing these ideas. And we think that's really powerful to have something that has that much of a contribution to resource conservation. But where we're really interested in, and what we're really interested in, I think, is getting to something that's even more directly related to our client's mission, which is education. So we've tried to take this term of net zero energy, and we've coined our own sort of term about using the rigor of a process like that to actually get closer to the educational side of the mission. So what we've come up with is a term that we call net positive education. So just to say that net zero energy is great, and we love the idea, but let's bring it together, into a larger package that actually has a positive outcome, a positive impact on educational outcomes. So what we've been doing is trying to leverage all the resources and the tools and the passion around sustainable design to create these great learning environments. And what I think we've been doing that's most relevant and interesting along these lines is we started developing a post-occupancy evaluation process, which we started many years ago, and it was always a sort of qualitative, survey-based, approach where we would engage the users from students and teachers. We haven't quite gotten to parents yet, but that we probably should, in their existing facilities. And then while we were designing the building, we could tap the sort of input that we would get from the pre-occupancy side of that. And then we would ultimately design a building that hopefully responds to some of those issues, and then we come back and survey them after the fact in the new facility, to see how the two sets of responses compare. So we were asking the same questions in the existing facility as we were in the new facility, or the modernized facility. But what we've been able to do with our sustainability team here is actually bring a quantitative side to the evaluation as well. So we have all sorts of meters that we can bring into the environment now, and actually test both environments again too, so that we can get survey feedback on thermal comfort or air quality or daylight and glare and all these issues, but then we can also evaluate them against the performance benchmarks that the design aspired to, and say, well, somebody might say that it's a little too cold in the environment, and we can see how the environment's actually performing relative to their comments too, and we can start to put those data together to see if they're telling the same story. But the challenge that we found in developing this post-occupancy evaluation relative to this idea of educational outcomes is we haven't quite gotten there yet, to how, what's the value of creating this high performance learning environment, even if we're hitting the sort of design metrics, is it then influencing education, I think is sort of the current state of our question, right now. And what I'm very excited about is we're working closely with one of the largest school districts that we work with to evaluate 11 different schools, using this methodology. And some of those schools are not yet modernized, but slated for modernization. Some have gone through modernization. Some are in the midst of modernization. So we have sort of before, in the midst, and after. And what the district is doing is helping us access some of the performance metrics, that they're collecting now. So everything from, test scores, as everybody sort of keys in on quite often, but student retention, graduation rates, even down to reports coming out of the health clinic and the nurse's office as to the number of children that are showing up there on a daily basis and the kinds of issues that they're having. So that's finally, I think, creating a picture that takes, in many ways, ideas that we think are critical to high-performance school design. Again, thermal comfort, air quality, daylight, glare, acoustics, material health, and starts to finally suggest that, through this dozen buildings, that we're studying at this point in time, are we starting to see correlations between those educational outcomes and the high-performance, sustainable design approach that we're taking, or others are taking, in this case, on these projects. So I think that in many ways is I think the forefront of what we're trying to do here, at Perkins Eastman with respect to school design and then sustainable high performance design is again, turn it around to get to, can we now work backwards from, we've recognized that, these schools that have seemingly had a significant impact, subsequent to their modernization. Can we work back and figure out what the most effective strategies were to ultimately, address again our clients' direct mission to educate children better, and leverage the environment to do so.